All right. Hello, team. Happy Tuesday. Matt Ham here with UPrint Faith and Personal Development. This is our weekly Tuesday conference call. As we all know, it's been an interesting time over the last few weeks as we have all been adjusting to this new normal of life with all kinds of drama across the news feeds and people staying home. And I think that as I was talking with some of the team before we went live, that, it's a great moment in time for us to truly clarify who we are, what we're about, where our priorities are. But I think the same is true for our clients and those we interact with as well. People right now are spending time on things that matter and not flippant things or whatnot. So I think that we are in a great season of clarification for all involved. And I hope that we would do the necessary work of pausing during this time and really reflecting on the question, how will I be different as a result of this? I think that's a question that we should write down and ask ourselves and ponder through and really study. How has this changed me? Has this changed me? How will I be different as a result of this moment? A lot of times these signature moments come through in our lives and we don't understand that they are molding us and have the power to mold us and shape us in a better way, but they can also mold us and shape us in a not so good way. And so if we can use moments and opportunities like this to shape us into a better version of ourselves, we've gone through the trial and come out the other end as a better version of ourselves rather than gone through the trial and come out with a bunch of wounds or unnecessary developments that haven't really served us or anybody else around us well at all. So that being said, today I want to dive into the topic of difficult conversations. And this is coming really fresh off the cuff of my own life of some difficult conversations I've had to have. So let me share a couple stories with you and why I feel like this is important for us to really think about and pause and focus on. So earlier today, my wife had a little get-together with a group of women that she meets with, a little Bible study type thing, and they were meeting in the park across the street from our house, outdoors, and of course they haven't seen each other in a while, and I wanted to make sure that my wife had that time. Well, in the process, I forgot that I had a call scheduled at 8:30. Well, now I'm home with my 5 kids, our 5 kids, I should say. And it was my responsibility to make sure that the kids were taken care of. Now, it's hard enough taking care of all 5 of them when she's not around and it's like you're juggling, jumping beans. But nonetheless, we were doing okay until I remembered, oh my gosh, I have this call. And it wasn't just a phone call that I could delay. It was actually an interview for our podcast series that I needed to have. And so I was like, oh my goodness. Well, immediately in the moment, I'm thinking, okay, what should I do here? Should I, take the baby, which was the main concern because the other kids are old enough, they can handle it. But should I take the baby to my wife? But I don't want to, interrupt her time or whatnot. So I made the decision to put the baby in the crib so she couldn't go anywhere and told the eldest child, make sure you watch the kid, right? And I went upstairs. Now, mind you, I'm upstairs. I'm in the house, okay? I've got a 10-year-old, near 10-year-old, watching an infant who's in a crib. I think we're going to be okay. Well, I do the interview, and I come downstairs to my wife, who is holding the baby, and she is not happy at all. You see, what happened was she walked into the house because she got done early, and the eldest had the baby crying, and the other 3 are instigating the situation on the front porch, saying that Dad left to go take a call and the baby hit her head. And my wife enters into this moment where she doesn't know what's going on, and she thinks, what has he done? He left the baby after the baby's hit his head to take a call, and you got Mo, Larry, and Curly on the front porch like giving a play-by-play to my wife. I mean, this was a major situation. So when I came downstairs, my wife was not happy. And I'm like, why is she so upset? I was like, I was just upstairs. I was up there literally for 12 minutes. The baby was in the crib, couldn't hurt herself, and the eldest was watching the baby. But you see, what happened was there was no clarity on the story. My wife saw what she saw, irresponsible dad, and all this kind of stuff. And so what we had to do is my wife and I had to get over the emotions of her anger and me defending myself to have a conversation. And we let each other kind of calm down to the moment. And I came back out and I said, hey, let me understand what you saw and let me explain what actually happened. The baby didn't hit her head when I didn't leave the baby injured, and I explained the situation instead of Mo, Larry, and Curly on the front porch. And my wife explained the situation from the way she saw it. And, we agreed I made a mistake in missing on my calendar. I should have just given my wife a call to say, hey, something's topped up and taken the baby to her or whatever. But what I'm saying is there was two ways that could have gone. It could have been this massive blow up because of her perspective and then my perspective. And I could have gotten defensive, and it could have created great turmoil and pretty much ruined the day, if not sent the week in a wrong direction. But instead, we've been married 15 years. Last week, we celebrated our 15th anniversary. So we paused and we said we need to have a difficult conversation, keep the emotional side out of it, and let's clarify what actually happened so we can move toward a conclusion and towards something that's better and beneficial so it doesn't happen again. Because the insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome, right? And a lot of times in relationships especially, we expect outcomes to be different even though we're not willing to have the difficult conversations. So that's example number one. Example number two is a group of men that I meet with every Monday night. Again, another kind of men's Bible study group. And, dudes are not the best at communicating anyway. And so what happened is I started to perceive that one of the guys was maybe struggling with something. And, and I'm watching this movie unfold. This guy's struggling with something over here, and this guy over here is maybe saying a couple things. He's not really aware of how this guy's struggling, and it just caused some frustration. And so I called up the gentleman this morning. I said, hey, bud, I noticed something was kind of heavy on your heart last night. Do you want to talk about it? He was a little bit hesitant at first, but then he opened up, and he said, man, I'm really struggling with this, and I didn't feel like this person was really aware of that. And I said, listen, here's the deal. You need to decide if you can either let this go and move on, but if you can't, we need to sit down and have a conversation with maybe the three of us so you can get it out of your heart what you need to say to bring clarity to the situation instead of letting this fester into something that can potentially ruin a relationship or become problematic down the road. Have you guys ever done this? It's like you let something slide in a relationship. Somebody didn't do something that you thought they should have done, and you go, I'm going to let it slide. And then 6 months later, something happens. You go, you remember that time 6 months ago when you did this thing? What you do is you unearth all of this stuff that is not properly clarified or healed, and it ends up doing great damage to relationships. And so the mindset that I want to take into this is twofold. Number one is, are you willing to have difficult conversations? So many people avoid confrontation because they don't want to have difficult conversations. And they don't talk with spouses or family members, extended family members, employees, coworkers, clients, builders, whatever the case is. There's all these relationships that go on in our life, and we're unwilling to have the difficult conversations. So what happens is when we're unwilling to have it, it's like a spur, like like a sand spur is what we call them down here. It's like a little cactus-like thing that's on the end of it, and it'll stick in you, and it hurts. There's all these little sand spurs, and what happens is if you move on thinking that it'll just go away, you bump that thing and it just is uncomfortable. And then you bump it again, it's uncomfortable. And if you have 10 or 15 of those sand spurs, you can't navigate through your day without bumping into that sand spur. And so we've got to do the difficult work of having difficult conversations. That's one side, avoidance. The other side of that is somebody who is so hyper emotionalized that they don't have conversations. They just try to dominate the situation. And I'm going to tell them like it is, and this is the way it is. And they forcefully try to control the situation because they're unwilling to have a conversation. You see, they think they're having a conversation because I'm going to speak my mind. No, you are doing just that. You're speaking your mind, but you're not letting anyone else talk. You have no desire to listen. You just have a desire to tell. And so when you're having difficult conversations, it's twofold. You can't avoid it, number one. And number two, you can't overpower it as well. You see, I tend to have the persona that's big personality, and I'm going to step in, I'm going to tell you what I think, and this is the way it's going to be kind of thing. I can be that way sometimes. It's not healthy. It's not good. Instead, say, hey, help me understand what it is that you're seeing. Help me understand what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you're thinking. Let's clarify this because I want to move past it. I desire the relationship, and I appreciate the relationship more than the circumstance or situation. You see, so many relationships in our lives and opportunities in our lives pass us by because we are unwilling to engage in conversation and choose a relationship over a situation. You know, there may be family members, estranged family members, because of an unwillingness to have a conversation. And know too, when you enter into this, that it's a two-sided coin. You can attempt all you want to listen and have the conversation, but if the other party is unwilling to listen, you might not get anywhere, but that does not relieve or alleviate you from bringing that calm, centered mindset and a willingness to have the conversation to the table. So my hope is that this is serving you guys in a real way, that it's not just some kind of pie in the sky, oh, let's talk about our feelings and all sit around a circle and sing Kumbaya. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at we need to move to excellence in our lives and our businesses, but you cannot grow beyond the conversations you are not willing to have. I'm going to say that again. It's worth writing down and pondering. You cannot grow beyond the conversations you're unwilling to have. It's these conversations that hold us back, and it's these moments that we don't move past because we just don't want to be difficult, right? Or we're going to control it so much that we can't be vulnerable and willing to step in and go, hey, man, this really, really hurt me, and I just need to get it off my heart. Because I think a lot of times when we pause and allow a conversation to occur without the emotional craziness, what it does is it brings clarity so that we can move beyond it. You see, right now, I know that if I'm ever left with the 5 kids again, and I am in a moment where I don't know what to do, I don't need to try to figure it out without my wife. I need to call her and say, babe, this has come up. How do I need to handle it right now? And everything's on the table, including canceling the call. But you see, I tried to do it on my own because I didn't want to bother her, but it ended up causing a bigger problem. That's what I needed to own. What she needed to own in the conversation and in the relationship is that when she came in, she took Mo, Larry, and Curly's advice of what was happening, which was not actually the truth, and let that get her into a heightened emotional state. And so the last part of this, and the part that I want to close with, is when we have difficult conversations, it makes us own our space. Difficult conversations make us own our space. Now, when you have 2 people owning their space, having a conversation, resolution can occur. If you only have one who's owning their space and the other is still operating in blame or shame or belittling or whatnot, resolution might not occur, but at least the person who owns it can be free from it. Because there are multiple relationships in my life where the resolution wasn't there. The relationship wasn't repaired, or it didn't go the way that I wanted it to. But I had to own it enough to say, listen, this is where I stand. This is where I'm coming from. I am willing to have a conversation about this, but I am not going to let this thing hang over my head anymore. And it's like you can take this baggage that happens in your life and you can truly set it down and you can keep on moving down the path. And if you're unwilling to do that, we end up carrying around all this baggage that we don't even realize that are kind of a part of our identity and we didn't even know it. Something might happen in another relationship, completely unrelated, and it triggers that pain from that previous relationship. You know, I had a moment like this with it was actually a church leadership here in our city. You know, we have a ministry and it's very out of the box. You know, it involves business, it involves faith. Ooh, don't talk about both of those together. But it's either got to be in this box of church and religion, or it's got to be in this Tony Robbins, like, you know, power of you kind of thing. And we're saying, no, it's both. It's right here in the middle. And we're taking steps forward, right? So early on, we had a church leader who basically, you know, was critical was saying, "No, you can't do that," and da, 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 da. And I didn't address the conversation with that person. I just said, I'll move on. But then a couple years later, another church leader said the same thing, and I blew up in defensiveness. Well, you don't understand because you don't know. No. What I was doing was responding to a previous wound that I didn't even realize was there because I was unwilling to heal it by having a difficult conversation. And a lot of times in these moments when we spark up in our emotions, what's actually being revealed is that there are deeper wounds in our own lives. And you know, it feels like if you stick a finger in a cut or in a wound or you put some alcohol on it, it stings and you flip out, right? That is what's happening in our relationships with conversations we are unwilling to have. And so I challenge you with this today, guys, because it's necessary. It's necessary to move beyond the old pains and wounds and have those conversations so that you can be free moving forward and not trip on something that was from 15 years ago that you didn't even realize was there. But also, too, as a way to repair the current relationships and bring more excellence into that environment. So today, as a kind of closing statement, right, is your greatest opportunity to be kind to someone is when you have been maligned. When someone maligns you, it's your greatest opportunity to be kind. And being kind is not about overlooking faults or not taking responsibility, but it's about choosing to say, listen, I'm going to be gentle, I'm going to be kind in this, I'm going to be willing to have a conversation. Instead of letting it cause pain and frustration and build up a bunch of baggage that you carry with you into your future that keeps you from being the best version of yourself. And so again, today, on top of my heart, this is real, raw kind of stuff I'm going through that I wanted to bring to the table. And so I hope that it wasn't too pie in the sky, that there's great application about this in our lives and in our businesses and in our relationships, that we cannot grow beyond the conversations we're unwilling to have. So today, go have a difficult conversation as a way to bring clarity. It might be hard, but I promise it'll allow the process of healing to occur so you can move forward and be a better version of yourself. So thank you guys so much for joining us today for our conference call. As always, reach out if you need to. Matt@uprint.life. 910-619-4644 is my cell. You guys have an awesome rest of the week, and we'll see you next week.